First of all, let's get this out of the way. No AI was used at any point in the creation of this video, which should be pretty obvious to anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear, but you never know these days. This video is not sponsored. I am not getting paid by anyone for this, I paid no one for this, and all opinions are my own. Now, I'm sure this will surprise many, but the other day I stumbled across something on the internet I found annoying and wrong-headed. On Reddit, of all places. Shocking, right? I was looking around to see how the record store scene in San Diego is currently represented online, which I found is largely with a lot of outdated and extremely limited information, without any coverage I'd single out as truly comprehensive and up-to-date, whether you're talking about Yelp, Reddit, forums, blogs, or local media outlets. Every guide I could find is either limited to less than half the available options, or rife with outdated and wrong information, leaving off recent openings and continuing to show closed locations. Even the official Record Store Day website still lists several stores that have been gone for years. There are a few decent tries. The best I could find at dosd.com. It misses several stores and still lists the shuttered Love Bus, but that only closed like 3 months ago, and this is the only list to even bother to show more than 15 locations. One list I found shows a store that's over 90 miles from San Diego, so, before you plan your trips here, verify. That's all I'm saying. Now, I've been living here and buying music in San Diego for over 2 decades, including during the lean times when there were maybe a single-digit number of record stores here, and I think I've shopped in all or nearly all of the at least 34 currently operating retail venues for physical music media. Both vinyl LPs and CDs. Maybe not extensively, but thoroughly enough to get an idea of each store's strengths and weaknesses, and to develop my own opinions on them. So, when I saw Ike's here posting on Reddit that they had supposedly spent 90 minutes in North Piks and come away empty-handed, I couldn't help but think that's not a problem with the store. That's an indicator of someone who's looking for the wrong thing in the wrong place the wrong way. Now, this person gives no indication of what they actually wanted, and as far as I can tell, their posting history gives no indication of their taste. They certainly aren't posting a lot about music, and I'm not going to invade their privacy just to speculate idly or make assumptions about their likes and dislikes. But if you're looking for something from the last 5 to 10 years at North Piks, you're probably barking up the wrong tree entirely. North Piks stands apart from other record stores here for many reasons, not all of them positive. They're only open Thursdays through Sundays, and then only from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. And the place looks like a hoarder hole, because it basically is. There are no new drops on release day, no Record Store Day releases, no limited edition splatter color, liquid-filled picture disc variants or other such dumb garbage. And if you're only searching for rare grails worth $100 or more, you might as well skip this now and save us all some annoyance. So take heed. If you can't deal with limited hours, restricted accessibility, poor organization, or total lack of curation, there's every chance North Piks is not for you. That's okay. No store is for everyone, no matter what they claim. But when it comes to crate digging, the chase of hunting through hundreds or even thousands of discs in hopes that you'll uncover something special, nothing else comes close. Granted, there's one main reason North Piks is worth mentioning, and that reason can be summed up in 4 words. Everything costs $2. Albums, CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, multiple disc collections, even clothing. No matter what, everything is $2 a piece. That's tough to beat. Still, that low price point wouldn't mean much without the stock to back it up. And North Piks literally has more stock than any one person could physically go through in a day. Even if you wanted to, the sheer physical effort required to unearth and flip through every box is simply beyond the limits of the human body. And honestly, after about more than an hour and a half in there, the trapped feeling of being among the stacks starts to trigger my flight response, and I need to call it, pay for my fines and get the hell out of Dodge until the next time. But as every crate digger knows, the true rewards come back at home, with hours of fresh-to-you listening for literal pennies on the dollar in some cases, and discoveries that might open new vistas of listening you would never have taken a chance on for $30, $20, or even $10. At $2 an album, one can afford to stretch beyond the familiar and predictable, And to me, that's an invaluable experience in any circumstance. You'll probably have the best luck with material from the golden ages of vinyl from the 50s to the mid-80s, and of CDs from the 80s to the early 2000s. But you'll have the best experience if you're open to taking some random shots on things that might end up falling flat in the end. Hell, for $2, why the hell not? I can't tell you what you should buy. For all I know, that person who couldn't find anything has a massive music collection containing everything here already, though somehow I doubt that very much. What I can do is show you what I have bought at North Piks and how that's worked out for me. Now, at first I wondered if I should put this off, because to tell the truth, I had just visited North Piks not even 3 weeks ago. And I don't generally like to visit any single record store more than once a month, even ones that actually do get new releases shipped to them every week. So that might slant my tests, since there was always the chance that I'd depleted the store of most things I'd be interested in on my last visit. And maybe I hadn't given them enough time to bring in new stock. How deep would I have to dig to make my visit worthwhile? Would I just end up proving that poster's point if I came away with nothing after 90 minutes? Well, that ended up not being a problem. Now, before we get started here, I want to mention one caveat that applies to any record store, but doubly so here. Make sure to check the condition of the actual disc inside the sleeve or case, ensuring first of all that the right disc is there, and secondly, that it isn't all scratched to hell. At North Piks, the onus is very much on you to make of it what you will. But again, check for deep scratches, water damage, and mold before you get any too excited about anything you find. With that out of the way, let's see what I added to my collection from North Piks this week. So first of all, first thing I pulled out of the pile of vinyl that's right at the entrance to the store, which I seem to feel is like where new arrivals generally end up, is this solo album by Rick Danko, best known as the bass player for the legendary The Band, Bob Dylan's backing group, multiple times during his career, and it's in very nice shape. Before I get too much further into this, by the way, these records and CDs, well, the records have all been cleaned and put into archival sleeves. Don't make the mistake of thinking any of those came from the store. And I generally clean the outside of the CD cases at the very least to get grime off, not just from North Piks, but anywhere. But this is another great example of the kind of stuff you find used records. Buy a new sealed record, you're not going to get stuff like this. Someone stuck this San Francisco Examiner clipping in there from 1999. It's been in there all this time. I do not know a lot about this record. I know Rick Danko is maybe the best singer, or one of the best singers out of the band, and it has Ronnie Wood, Tim Drummond from Neil Young's solo material, Eric Clapton's on here, so that dude's a turd, but he's on here anyway and can play some guitar, Doug Sahm, Joe Lala, Levon Helm's on this one too. So, band adjacent, another one I am looking forward to checking out. Marianne Faithfull, Broken English. This is cited by her as the defining work of her career and is a record I did not have yet. This is also a record that was featured on North Piks' Instagram page as one of Rick's reviews, so let's go to that now.
Broken English. Marianne Faithfull was already British singer when she started getting younger. She did a cover of The Still Go By. It was very proper, British folky stuff. Nothing like that on this record. This record basically, you can tell by her expression, is meant to kick ass. Broken English, which is song, Brain Drain, Guilt. She does a cover of Working Class Hero, the John Lennon song, and does a very good job with it. It's a cool record, it's one of a kind.
Roger McGuinn from The Byrds, his first solo album, I believe. I think all of the birds are on this at some point. If this one actually did come in an exterior sleeve. I tend not to buy exterior sleeves for my records because I don't really care that much if the sleeves end up showing some wear. That's life. But the lyric sheet included with it, Bob Dylan plays harmonica. Bruce Johnston from the Beach Boys. Spooner Oldham, also on Neil Young records. Hal Blaine from the Wrecking Crew. Don't let Carol Kay hear me say that. David Crosby. All right, here we go. Here's the song that all the birds are on. David Crosby, Chris Hillman, Michael Clark, Gene Clark, and Roger McGuinn, My New Woman. So at the very least, that ought to be worth hearing. We shall see. I like the comeback Back from Rio record that Tom Petty produced or co-produced or something in the 80s or early 90s, I want to say. I know McGuinn became like a preacher, so I tended to avoid overtly Christian stuff or stuff that might be overtly Christian, but I like the Byrds a lot. I'm going to give this one a shot. Different Strokes. This is a Columbia Records compilation album. Columbia did not have their sampler game down like Warner Brothers did, but this one, they have this. I believe it has 19 tracks on it, and I'm looking on Discogs, I believe several of them are edited versions that may not be the full album version, but I love samplers from time, and this has a lot of killer material on it, edited or not. I mean, come on. Soft Machine, The Hollies, Spirit, Miles Davis, It's a Beautiful Day, Laura Nyro, all on the same record. Come on. And, you know, what I really like about these sampler records, particularly the Warner Brothers sampler records, is checking out the stuff that I haven't heard of. So, we'll see. I love and these samplers are great to throw on when you don't know what you want to listen to, if nothing else. Narada. Let's double check the pronunciation guide. Narada rhymes with Florida. Narada. Sorry. I mean, with my last name is unpronounceable too, so, you know, no shame. Narada Michael Walden. Victory. This is a dude whose drumming I have admired on many, many records. He filled in with Journey. As you can see, Randy Jackson, who also filled in with Journey, is on this record. Every chance that this might get a couple of listens and go into the sale box, depending, but, you know, these are impeccable musicians. Sometimes those guys get a little crazy on their own and go into interesting places. Sometimes they go into super boring places. You never know. Worth a shot for $2 though. Ooh, this one was exciting. K-Tel, Super Bad Is Back compilation with tons of Kool and the Gang, Barry White, Curtis Mayfield. I mean, come on, Bill Withers. Finding decent compilations of music that was, let's say, often pushed to the back for mysterious reasons unknown. It's racism. It's always racism. But the killer aspects of the choices, I mean, James Brown, Earth, Wind, Fire, OJs. I mean, K-Tel pressings are going to be not super well mastered, going to be flimsy, going to be a little thin, but, you know, given the choices of the music on here, I'm willing to take it. The Youngbloods. This is something I just discovered, one of those like duh moments. Looking into Jesse Cullen Young, who turns up a lot in the used bins. Turns out Jesse Cullen Young was the dude from the Youngbloods. And their stuff is pretty well reviewed. Today the Youngbloods are only really remembered for that one song that they did, that sung at the beginning of the Nirvana song, "Come on people now, smile on your brother, blah blah blah." That's the Youngbloods. So this one is, I'm going to see their second. I don't know. It's not their first record, but worth a shot. Loverboy. Look at how Canadian these guys look. You can just feel the friendly Canadianness radiating off the truly, just emanating from everything. These guys would never end up suing each other like Journey. There's no chance of that. I mean, in fact, I think this, like, 4/5 of this band, this exact version of the band, is still touring. Like, I think maybe they just changed the bass player. But this one was like their fourth album, the first one without the producer who made their first 3 records, and they're making their best effort to stay relevant. You know, they did the best thing Canadians can do. They got Bryan Adams and Jim Vallance to contribute a song, and they got what they got. They got of this record with the title track. They knew it was out of the box there, so that's why they were going for a guaranteed hit from, you know, future Def Leppard, Shania Twain producer Mutt Lange, and what else? Jonathan Cain. Watch out! Gonna get into that Journey lawsuit aspect pretty soon if you don't get careful. Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads. I have never gotten around to checking out his solo work, but this one I remember being well reviewed in Rolling Stone at the time. He's making his bid as a band leader, producer, artiste, in that he chose the sleeve, which is a social statement. Casual Gods, I believe, was intended to be an actual band. You know, considering the dearth of Talking Heads activity around this time, I think it was a question of trying to keep active and the lack of David Byrne's interest of working with the band anymore, which, you know, I was always disappointed they didn't tour more because I never got a chance to see them live. But after Stop Making Sense, they were like, I guess, well, we did our film, and if you want to see us, you can go check that out. So, whatever. I mean, if you make one of the best live performance concert films of all time, I guess that's your right to do that. And finally, on vinyl, the other week I realized I have solo albums by Steve Howe and Chris Squire and Bill Bruford, but no Rick Wakeman or John Anderson. I want to find John Anderson's first solo record, and these are Rick's second and third solo records. If I dug further, I probably could have found a copy of the first one, Six Wives of Henry VIII, but you know, there's plenty of time to go back and dig for more. And these were in nice, clean shape, and they both have the enclosed booklets, which is the other kind of thing that you just can't duplicate from the vinyl experience, either in streaming or really in CD properly. And often these types of things are missing from records that have been handed down for generations, possibly in some cases. But in these cases, not so much. And you know, given the time and effort that went into this kind of stuff, I mean, you know, you can sit down, flip through this. I mean, I'm sure this stuff's probably reprinted in some CD version of the booklet somewhere, but again, not the same experience. That is the vinyl stuff from this trip. So, compact disc-wise, I mean, come on. I have gone off of the Smiths, and particularly their lead singer, a lot since my high school days. I'm done with his solo material, and you know, I honestly, it's kind of, I don't go back to the Smith stuff as much as I used to at one point. It's also not super well produced. It's really digital sounding. And so even when you get like vinyl records, there's like that kind of not super realistic effect. There's very of their time. But, you know, it's hard to argue that this has some killer songs on it. You know, even if I get to the point where I'm like, you know, I don't want to hear the Smiths again, period. For $2, any record store is going to give me credit on this. You know, this stuff still moves. This is Southern California. I don't know what things are like where you at, but you know, Smith stuff still moves down here. Morrissey still has a very devoted fan base that shows up to see him around here. And you know, no shame. Hey, I'm a guy whose favorite Kiss guitarist is Vinnie Vincent, so you know, you gotta listen to music by bad people sometimes. That's all there is to it. That's life, you know. But we all make our choices where they go. Steve Miller, Young Hearts, terrible title for a greatest hits album. Not a title of one of his songs. So I mean, you know, you're making a greatest hits album, especially it was supposed to be the quote unquote definitive greatest hits album. The greatest hits album he has that everyone knows is, you know, Bulletproof, the 70s one. But the fact is, it only covers songs from 3 albums, and then it's like one song from the Joker, and the rest of the songs come from 2 albums. So this is the first greatest hits that was really comprehensive. But take the money, run, Abracadabra on the same disc was the selling point here for the most part. But I mean, you're making a greatest hits record, you name it after the biggest hit. That's all. The Joker, of Bruce hits, or Fly Like an Eagle, whatever. Fun fact, he didn't actually write Jet Airliner. Paul Pena did, or Pena. Amazing, blind, I want to say, guitar player whose first record is impossible to find, and the second one didn't come out until like decades after the fact. They're both really, really hard to find, but Steve Miller somehow heard that dude's song and made a hit out of it, so hopefully at least he made him some money, even though didn't make any money out of his own music. Sinead O'Connor's first record. Kind of hoping to find this one with the UK cover, which is way better. The US record company made her tone it down because it looked too angry. Oh no, wouldn't want a woman to express emotion that was, unpleasant in any way. It says Mandinka was the big hit on here. I mean, as big hit for this record. It wasn't a Nothing Compares to You level or anything like that, but it's a killer song, and it's probably my favorite song of hers. Just Like You Said It Would Be is great. It's been a while since I heard this one, but again, for $2, it's a killer record, and I can look at the UK sleeve online if I want that. This, speaking of women in the music industry, I guess. When I first moved to San Diego in 2004, this was all over the local radio. This was the latest local hope. They were on Atlantic, and they got their record out there for a bit. But, they got some well-deserved blowback from their sexist album cover, and I believe lyrics too, although, I'd have to learn how to print it in here. So, again, super cool guys. But, it was a bad time to come out with this kind of stuff. Then it was the, Bon Jovi Slippery When Wet original cover. Didn't fly then either. But, so these guys did not break through on the major level. I remember hearing their Finding Out True Love Is Blind on the radio, and my first reaction, what is this, wannabe fall type of thing going on? And again, baffles, like, if you're gonna go for commercial success, why would the Fall be the band you imitate? But I never really gave them a full shot, so I'm willing to do that for $2. Hey, Regina Spektor. This record is well reviewed, and I don't know a whole lot about it, except that I liked a few of her songs back in the day, and I think she got well known at a certain point because she was like Julian Casablancas from The Strokes' girlfriend or something like that, or friend. She was connected up with that scene somehow or something like that. Again, can't know everything about anything, but again, that's kind of the point. $2, take a shot on something. We will see. If you don't know this movie, The Commitments, it's a great movie, or at least I remember it being tremendously entertaining. I saw it in the theater back in the day and then watched it a few times back on, videotape. But honestly, the reason I picked this up is that Glenn Hansard from The Frames, The Swell Season, who was in the movie once later on, this was Glenn's first kind of breakthrough success. There's Glenn right there. And I have one of Glenn's solo records that last time I listened to it, I was really surprised at how good it was. And, it's a damn shame that he died on a motorcycle like so many other people. Not a big fan of those things. So, yeah, maybe if you have a motorcycle, get rid of it. Those things suck. Meat Beat Manifesto. This is something I'm really excited about, and this was a real find for me. It's Jack Dangers. This is rated as one of his best records by some people. I'm sure some people would disagree with that, but I love what he did on the EBN, Emergency Broadcast Network CD. He produced all the music on that, and this, I would have paid $5 for that. Somewhere between 5 and 10 for sure, no, without question for this. So, at $2, this was a killer find. I mean, again, don't go looking for obscure industrial records from the 90s generally, but when you go digging, you find, right? You can definitely find a copy of this. You can find multiple copies of this. This is a good record. It's just one of those records that, because of time frame and I think, honestly, demographics, this came 2007. I think because it's Robert Plant doing a sort of country-ish leaning thing, and they kind of grabbed the tail end of the aging boomers that were still buying CDs, so there's a ton of these CDs out there. Generally, Robert Plant records aren't super expensive to find in general, but this one in particular is very easy to find these days. So I was waiting until I found a nice clean one with the booklet. And I prefer jewel boxes overall, but I in this case I like the digipack format. There was actually a version of this in a jewel box there that I went back and forth between. So if you want the jewel box version, probably still there. Primal Scream Exterminator. I don't know about everybody, but this is my personal favorite Primal Scream record, probably. The entire reason I bought this actually was the jewel box. I got sent this as a promo. Because it was a promo, it came in the typical cardboard sleeve that is what CDs come in today, the type of cut rate packaging that we've been reduced to these days. And it's the same record, there's nothing wrong with it. But at $2 I was like, I'd rather have the full packaging with the complete booklet, which is not included in my promo version of it. Cowboy Junkies, Whites Off Earth Now. This is their first album with a whole bunch of covers, I think. One song that they wrote, and then it's mostly a bunch of blues stuff, and then Bruce Springsteen. And again, like their second album, the Trinity Sessions, which had Sweet Jane and was their big breakout, captured live with one microphone. So again, there's something about that ambiance that is irreplicable, and something that, frankly, a lot more bands could stand to give a shot. It's an interesting exercise, recording the way that all recordings used to have to be made. The Bangles, Everything. I did not have this record. This is the one that had their big hits. Eternal Flame and In Your Room, I guess, was less of a big hit. But this was, I think, their last record before taking a long, long break. I always thought the Bangles were great. They should have had more success than they did. But as we know, the music industry is kind of shitty, and particularly doesn't take female artists all as seriously as they should a lot of the time. I understand a lot of the problem was they kept on saying, well, who's the lead singer, and pushing Susanna Hoffs as to be the front person of the band, understandably. But all the women sang, all the women wrote, they all sang lead. So there was no lead singer per se. It was a true band, a true collective, and it's not that complicated a thing to figure out. It's maybe treat them like a band, like any other band that's a collective, but that's not how the music industry works. They look to separate people, split them off, sow dissent, and divide and conquer. That's the way it works. Because they want someone they can control. That's how they do it. Singles, if you were around in the 90s, you know what this is. And if you weren't around in the 90s, let me tell you, it's probably one of the best single overall samplers of the grunge, quote-unquote, commercial grunge culture of the time. We got Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell solo, and a few tracks by Paul Westerberg from The Replacements, and a couple tracks by Paul Westerberg. The Lovemongers is Heart, under a different name. Mother Love Bone, Soundgarden proper, Pearl Jam, Mudhoney, Screaming Trees, Smashing Pumpkins, who were not from Seattle, but were definitely of that time, and then the outlier is Jimi Hendrix, May This Be Love, which doesn't really belong here. But again, an iconic collection from its time, even if the movie is probably pretty embarrassing and cringy in a lot of spots. PM Dawn, the Bliss album. Not the one with Set Adrift on Memory Bliss. This is the second album. But, you know, a more unique type of thing to come along at the time would have been hard to express. In a time when everything was suffused in the gangster rap, these guys came along saying, let's do exactly the opposite. Chill the fuck out. So I'm really looking forward to giving this one a shot. I haven't really visited this stuff in a long time. Norwegian Wood. All right. Okay then. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Another great movie. Maybe if you just watched The Odyssey, go check this one out. You might find some parallels, similarities. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? A Coen Brothers movie. A really entertaining Coen Brothers movie that had an amazing soundtrack of, I guess, what is country music, but it's before, like, this is old country. This is original American folk music, essentially. Big Rock Candy Mountain, Poe Lazarus, Down to the River to Pray, A Man of Constant Sorrow is repeated in multiple versions here because that's woven throughout the movie. Didn't Leave Nobody But the Baby, sung by Emmylou Harris, Alison Krauss, and Gillian Welch. I mean, come on. That is the real killer track that I picked this up for. I had a copy of this on vinyl, and it sounded flat and sucky. It sounded like, someone had taken the CD and just pressed it to vinyl in a haphazard way, and I think that might have been from the early days of the vinyl revival, before things really got rolling. Is what it is. There may be good pressings out there on vinyl. Didn't hunt down. I will say the one I had went into the sale bin, and it sounds great on digital. So might as well stick with digital if something sounds great on digital. Vinyl is not always better, and if you think it does, flat out wrong. Journey Greatest Hits, another one. Hey, any store is going to give you a few bucks of credit for this. This is always going to move out of the bin. Somebody's always going to be looking for a copy of Journey's Greatest Hits. Arguably the only Journey disc anyone really needs. I have more than that because I grew up in the 80s, and I had Escape and the one after that, the name of which escapes me, Frontiers, that's it. I've had Frontiers and Escape and listened to those a million times. This has a couple of songs on it that are not on those. Like, there's some of the earlier songs like Love and Touch and Squeezin', Any Way You Want It. The ones that aren't on Escape or Frontiers are on this, and so this is pretty much all the Journey songs that I need, because I'm not going to buy up all those old records on vinyl. At this point, I'm kind of more curious about hearing the pre-Steve Perry sort of prog fusion records that they made, and those are going to be pretty cheap in the used bins as well. But again, $2, can't go wrong with that. And if I get bored of it or it sucks, I can get that credit back anytime. Sheryl Crow's technically second album, but arguably you could call it her third or her first, depending on how you look at it, because I understand there was a whole album recorded before Tuesday Night Music Club that was junked. Then the first album that came out was Tuesday Night Music Club, which had the big hits, Leaving Las Vegas, All I Want to Do, Strong Enough, Can't Cry Anymore, I don't think was as big a hit, but some of those songs everyone knows. But those songs were all kind of co-written by a bunch of different people, and I know that there's people who felt burned by her from that. Yeah, I don't know all the backstory of that. I'm not gonna get into it without me knowing more about it. But I know that she reclaimed the reins for this, her second album that came out, which is why it's self-titled, and I honestly liked this one better always. My favorite song of hers, If It Makes You Happy, Every Day is a Winding Road also became a pretty big hit. Change Would Do You Good, so again, she had to prove herself a second time because a lot of the credit for the success of her first album went to the many dudes who were listed as co-writers on that album. this is a good album. She proved herself as far as I'm concerned on this, and commercially it performed very, very well. Paul Simon's Concert in the Park. Another thing you can't replicate with the streaming format is this kind of packaging, the elaborate double CD. I mean, look at the kind of packaging that you used to get for just 2 CDs. Like the whole booklet, Fat Boy case is what they were called. So don't get worked up about the terminology. But yeah, not super great name for it, but that's what they're called. Later on, these would be used as 4-disc box sets, which is frankly a better use of the space because you got room to put another tray in here and another tray here as well. And it's kind of wasteful for 2. But the earliest part of the CD revolution, they were trying to make the packages look more impressive, because the fear was the smaller CDs would look less impressive next to the vinyl, and they kind of wanted to keep it under wraps that CDs actually cost a lot less to manufacture than vinyl, even they were selling them for many dollars more in most cases. So they wanted to make it look as expensive as possible, even though the discs themselves cost like $0.25 to press per. Peter Gabriel, music from the film Birdie. This is sort of a weird record that uses some of his earlier tracks in instrumental versions or remixed versions or something, but there's no way to go wrong with anything that has Peter Gabriel's name on the front as far as I'm concerned. Every Peter Gabriel record I've ever gotten has been worth what I've paid for it, and at $2 I'm more than willing to give this one a shot. Even soundtracks tend not to be at the top of my purchase, but it's Peter Gabriel, and his soundtrack for The Last Temptation of Christ, Passion, is an amazing album. I just listened to another of his soundtrack albums, since I want to say Long Walk Home. That's incredible music. So Peter Gabriel soundtracks stand out for me, and some people actually collect soundtracks, so whatever, good on them. Here's a good crate digging find. It's a record by The -5, which is kind of an REM spin-off side project with Scott McCoy, who was then a sideman for REM, I believe, but also we have Ken Stringfellow from the Posies, Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, Dennis Dyken from Smithereens, and this Return to Sender. I have a Penelope Houston record that's in this same series, and these were like side albums by a lot of people, I guess. This is like songs that were recorded during the sessions for Let the War Against Music Begin, which I guess is a -5 album. But again, $2, willing to take a shot. Sting, Nothing Like the Sun. I had this on CD back. I think this was actually the second CD my parents bought after they got a CD player. Of course, the first CD anyone got when they got a CD player back then was Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms, and that was for sure it. And then I think they got Pink Floyd's Momentary Lapse of Reason, and then maybe this was the third. But I remember this always sounding great, and I actually have this on vinyl, listened to it, and it sounded good, but I also realized too, like, this was digitally recorded. So it's not going to sound any better on vinyl than it does on the CD, which is just a fact of science. Like, that's how science works. If it's digitally recorded, digitally produced, digitally issued, and then you press that to vinyl, you're getting a certain thing on the vinyl that you're not going to get from the CD, and that certain something is the distortion of analog reproduction, which can be super cool. Don't get me wrong, I like that. But let's not fool ourselves that it's quote-unquote better. So I'm going to A/B them, frankly, at some point, and if I decide I don't need the vinyl, then I can probably make several bucks from selling it. And hey, for $2, if the CD is good enough, it may be worth it. I mean, honestly, I don't listen to Sting that much, so White Lion, the best of. I have no White Lion, and from what I understand, they're sort of unfairly tarred with the hair metal brush, but I mean, guys, you leaned into it. Kind of at the wrong time. They were at the tail end of the metal thing, and they got lumped in with, it was a real common joke. White snake, white lion, blah blah blah. They sounded too generic and too much like other bands at some point, overtly. But if you listen a little deeper, there's some guitar stuff going on there, things that was really quite striking. Wait is a good song. Little Fighter, When the Children Cry, those are the ones I remember. Unfortunately, when you get known for a cover song like Radar Love, that's always going to be a notch against you in my book too. But again, we're the best of, how are you going to go wrong? And if you do, hey, someone's going to give me more than $2 for that, probably in trade. John Mellencamp. I would not blame you if you give no fucks about John Mellencamp whatsoever. By all accounts, dude's kind of an asshole. I mean, his own nickname is the Little Bastard. So, they'll take it from there. He wears that proudly. But, I lived in Indiana in the 80s when this kind of stuff was ubiquitous. His album, was huge when I was the right age of like 5th grade, 6th grade, something like that. So, yeah, those goons got embedded into my mind. And this kind of has all the songs that you need if you care even slightly about John Mellencamp. I have on vinyl. I have Scarecrow, Lonesome Jubilee, Big Daddy, and those are records. they're good records. They're enjoyable records. But I mean, what he does is not a thing that I think has a lot of resonance necessarily today for a lot of people. If you're into it, like me, cool, great. I'm not even super into it. There's times when ROCK in the USA or the Authority song hits just right. Not for everyone, but at $2, again, how can you go wrong? Once again, Robert Palmer, a dude I don't think has a lot of resonance today necessarily. I mean, he's largely remembered popularly for 3 or 4 hit songs: Doctor Doctor, Simply Irresistible, and Addicted to Love. That's pretty much it in the popular imagination. But, the dude was a great, great singer. I really like the Power Station hits, and the Tony Thompson drumming is, effing amazing. Dave Grohl stole a ton of those fills for the Nirvana stuff he did. He'll tell you, I'm not spoiling anything. He'll tell you the same thing. But this record was his follow-up to the one with Addicted to Love on it, so it leaned into that sound super hard. This does not have Tony Thompson on it, but has Eddie Martinez on guitar. Killer Eddie Martinez may not be a guitar hero name but if you look it up, I bet you'll be surprised at all the things Eddie Martinez played on. So I know Simply Irresistible. I don't know any of the rest of this, but I'm looking forward to giving it a shot because I picked up Robert Palmer's Riptide not too long ago, and that was a super enjoyable record. And last, Pat Benatar, Best Shots, to wrap up the classic rock greatest hits collections, I guess. Another one that arguably the only Pat Benatar record you need if you need any Pat Benatar records at all. I mean, if you know any Pat Benatar songs, they're all here. I like her stuff. I got a couple of her records that I have not listened to a ton, but I'm going to give them more of a shot, and if I end up deciding to sell them, I'll still be keeping this one because this has, every Pat Benatar song I ever want to listen to. This one even has Hell's for Children in live version and in the studio version. So that's got everything you need. So we had a total of 11 vinyl records, 24 CDs for a total of 35 items. That adds up to $70 total out the door. That same amount of money, $70, might get you one copy of the new Rolling Stones album, or the first 2 Olivia Rodrigo's LPs if you're lucky. So yeah, 35 albums, $70. I mean, come on, can you argue with that? Tell me where you got 35 albums for $70 somewhere else. I mean, seriously, if you did find 35 albums for $70 somewhere else, I'm going to go there too. Looking at the records that I've brought home that didn't make the cut, there's like 11 records that I've bought from there that have ended up going into the sale box for one reason or another. Either they were glitchy or I just didn't vibe with the record. But again, there's 11 records times $2, that's $22 that I spent on those 11 records, and I'll probably get all that back in trade whenever I take those to Folk Arts or Standards or Normal Records or wherever. It's no big loss, and I'm glad to have heard even the stuff I didn't vibe with. Sometimes I feel like I learn more trying to figure out why I don't like something, or why it doesn't quite work, than trying to dissect and analyze something that succeeds totally. I mean, you could drive yourself crazy trying to figure out all the brilliance of the Beatles or, Pink Floyd or whatever you think is the top of the heap. But sometimes when you hear something that isn't quite there, your brain automatically kind of fills in the spaces and, pushes you into more interesting places. But it's always worth examining one's own preconceptions and finding out how wide the gap is between what you think something sounds like and what it actually is. Thanks to you for watching. I'm not trying to make a living on here or anything, so feel free not to click like. I don't care if you subscribe. I definitely would never bother to turn notifications on. And if you leave a comment, I may or may not even read it, let alone respond. All this stuff only serves to bolster YouTube's own internal gaming of your viewing for their benefit anyway. I personally don't benefit one iota if one person, or 1,000, or 20,000 watch this video, so it makes absolutely zero difference to me. Feel free not to subscribe. I'm serious. In fact, you should follow these accounts instead of following me. You'll be a lot more entertained. I guarantee it. YouTube and social media is all dubious nonsense, so take all this for what you will. Don't take any of it too seriously, this included. See you in the record racks.